Well, tonight everything changes, guys, because what I'm about to show you doesn't just rewrite the story of Thomas Crooks, it shatters the narrative that we were force-fed for more than a year. Now, for months, the FBI swore up and down that Crooks was a ghost. No online presence, no digital trail, no warning signs. And the media, the mainstream media repeated the script kind of like loyal foot soldiers. But now, thanks to a sudden dump of internal files that someone clearly did not want you to see, the truth has now finally slipped through their fingers. And that truth is terrifying, folks, because the same radical Discord circles that shaped the Charlie Kirk shooter, the same far-left identity cults that recruit vulnerable young men into extremist fantasies, the same private servers pushing the fascism is everywhere paranoia that leads unstable kids straight into violence, they weren't just connected to Thomas Crooks. They appear to have been part of a pipeline, a pattern, a machine. And the FBI, they didn't just miss it, they buried it. They hid Crooks' online identity, they stonewalled Congress, and they let the public believe the lie that he was just another right-wing loner. But tonight, the mask comes off. Newly uncovered files reveal Crooks' deleted accounts, the Discord servers he was inside, the ideological spiral that he followed, and the disturbing overlap with the exact same digital cesspool linked to the previous attacks on conservative figures. You're going to see how everything is connected, how the trail they erased has reappeared, and how deep this radical youth network really goes. Deeper than the FBI admitted, deeper than the media dared to touch, and deep enough to raise serious national security questions under President Donald J. Trump. This isn't just a story about Crooks anymore. No, this is about a broken pipeline, a digital radicalization engine, and an institutional cover-up that just blew wide open. Buckle up, folks, because what comes next, this is going to change the conversation forever. Hit the like button and subscribe. Okay, folks, let's get right into it, because the moment that these newly surfaced documents hit daylight, everything that the FBI told us for the last 18 months fell apart in real time. These files weren't leaked, and they definitely weren't provided in good faith. They were unearthed, dragged into the light by investigators who refused to let this get buried. And what do you know? What do they show? That Thomas Matthew Crooks did have a digital footprint, and a rather extensive one. That the FBI's public claims of no online presence, they weren't just incomplete, they were fundamentally untrue. And the most explosive part, his footprint doesn't lead to some random corner of the internet. No, his footprint leads straight into the heart of radical Discord communities, servers pushing extremist ideology to vulnerable youth. Exactly the pipeline that we were told did not exist. Drop an "I told you so" if you knew that this always existed. Now, to understand why this matters, why these files hit like a political earthquake under President Trump's administration, you have to go all the way back to 2024's Butler rally. This was the moment America watched, stunned, as a man nearly assassinated the Republican nominee and now President of the United States. And pretty much everything about that day raised red flags. An unmanned rooftop that should have been occupied, a kid walking around with a rangefinder unchallenged, security gaps that were so glaring that looked scripted. And through all of it, the FBI shrugged and called Crooks a lone wolf, a quiet Republican kid who snapped out of nowhere. But these new files show he wasn't a ghost. He wasn't invisible, and the supposed mystery around his actions, it wasn't a mystery at all. And speaking of moments that change everything, everyone has that one decision that flips their entire future. Now, for thousands of retirees watching this channel today, that decision was calling Chapter about their Medicare plan. This is exactly why I partnered with Chapter, folks. They turn that overwhelming, confusing Medicare mess into something simple, fast, and genuinely life-changing. Now, one viewer said, "It felt like I got my power back." And honestly, this is what it's all about. So let me ask you, is this your turning point? Now, most people already crossed that line after calling the phone number right there at the bottom of your screen, 909-563-8279, or for visiting askchapter.org/Ron. And don't take my word for it. Listen to this comment from Bob. He said, "I called Chapter and they were able to save me over $6,000 a year, plus the plan pays me back $135 each month to offset my med." I love it. So now let's talk about the original narrative, because this wasn't just a mistake. This was a coordination. Now, for more than a year after the Butler attack, Democrats, media pundits, and every blue collar on social media repeated the same storyline. Crooks was a Republican. Crooks was a Trump voter. Crooks was proof that right-wing violence was eating itself alive. Every talking head from MSNBC to TikTok activists, they all ran with it. And anyone who questioned it labeled a conspiracy theorist. But now, with these new files out, we now know the truth. The narrative wasn't just misleading, it was a smokescreen. I mean, they framed the story to fit a political agenda, and in doing so, they hid one of the most dangerous youth radicalization pipelines that we've ever seen. Because once investigators dug into these recovered digital files, they uncovered an online identity that contradicts everything that the public was told. I mean, Crooks wasn't a right-wing kid spiraling into MAGA extremism. He was living a second life online, inside communities steeped in far-left identity politics, LGBTQ-coded subcultures, and niche fetish artwork. His verified email was tied directly to accounts like Epic Microwave, loaded with gender-bending art, furry content, anti-Trump posts, and the same left-wing grievance messaging that mirrored the profile of the Charlie Kirk shooter. This is the part that the FBI downplayed. This is the part that the media never touched, because acknowledging it would mean admitting that the pipeline didn't run right. It ran left. So once you examine Crooks' online tracks, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. These weren't random communities. These were part of a growing network inside Discord, far-left ideology rings, recruiting and shaping vulnerable teens. These servers push a relentless narrative. Trump is a fascist. Republicans want you dead. Silence is self-defense. And this isn't speculation. It mirrors what's documented in the New York Post's reporting on far-left coded Discord spaces radicalizing young boys. These servers operate like identity microcults, feeding fear, promising belonging, and grooming emotionally isolated kids into increasingly extreme beliefs. And now we know Crooks wasn't just lurking. He was fully immersed, just like the Kirk shooter, just like the others. This isn't niche anymore. This is a pattern. So when you line up these shooters side by side, what emerges is a chilling, consistent psychology profile. Isolated, socially detached, emotionally fragile, then pulled into niche online spaces filled with identity-obsessed rhetoric, apocalyptic messaging, and the myth that genocide is coming unless they act. These Discord channels don't just spread lies, they weaponize insecurity. They tell lost young men that politics is a holy war, that fascists are everywhere, that words are violence, and therefore real violence is justified. This is the same emotional cocktail that shaped the Charlie Kirk shooter, the same digital pressure cooker that influenced Crooks, and the same pattern investigators keep stumbling into behind the scenes. I mean, it's industrial scale indoctrination, and nobody in power wants to talk about it. And this is where everything snaps into focus, because Crooks' digital footprint didn't just reassemble the Charlie Kirk shooter, it mirrors it. Same platforms, same servers, same ideology, same spiral. I mean, the Reuters report detailing the explosion of right-wing anger after Charlie Kirk's killing revealed something that the media tiptoed around. The shooter came out of an identical online radicalization bubble. Both young men consumed the same anti-fascist propaganda loops, the same apocalyptic narratives about Trump and conservatives, and the same identity communities that rewarded extremist thinking with validation and praise. When two attackers share the same ideological pipeline, the same digital communities, and the same descent into violence, that's not a coincidence. That is a blueprint. It is a pattern that they hoped you would never see. Now, here's where the story breaks wide open, because according to the New York Post reporting, Congress is furious. Not confused, not surprised, they're furious. Why? Because the FBI allegedly had Crooks' online posts months earlier. They had the Discord logs, they had the connections, and they never shared them with the committees tasked with investigating the Butler security failure. Instead, the Bureau let the right-wing shooter narrative circulate and quietly sat on the evidence that Crooks had ties to radical left-wing online spaces. That wasn't a clerical error. It shaped the national conversation. It misled the public. And now it fuels a very suspicion that the Bureau tried to bury the truth to avoid political fallout under the newly inaugurated President Trump. So now we arrive at the question that no one in Washington wants to say out loud. Why hide it? Why bury Crooks' Discord footprint? Why suppress the very evidence that unraveled the entire right-wing shooter narrative? Well, look, guys, I'm not here to speculate. I'm here to ask the same questions that millions of Americans are asking right now. Did the FBI downplay the far-left radicalization pipeline because exposing it would ignite backlash from protected political groups? Did they fear the instability that it would create as Donald J. Trump stepped back into the Oval Office? Or were they just terrified that the public would discover the truth? that young radicalization is not coming from MAGA Facebook pages, but from far-left online indoctrination hubs. Because once you examine how these Discord servers and networks operate, the reality, it hits you like a brick. They're not just chat rooms, they're recruitment machines. Inside these servers, the culture is obsessive and militant. Fascism is everywhere. Republicans are dangerous. Direct action is self-defense. This is the language that's fed to teenagers who feel isolated, misunderstood, and desperate for belonging. And so when you pump that kind of rhetoric into vulnerable young minds day after day, hour after hour, they start to believe that nonsense. They start to see violence as noble. They start to view political opponents as existential threats. Some even celebrate acts of political violence, encouraging the next unstable kid to be the hero, so to speak. This is how digital radicalization becomes real-world danger. So when you step back and you kind of line up every one of these incidents, the pattern becomes impossible to deny. Crooks wasn't an outlier. The Charlie Kirk shooter wasn't an outlier. The campus attackers targeting conservative speakers were not outliers. The far-left individuals who threatened Supreme Court justices were not outliers. Every one of these cases traces back to the same digital ecosystem, the same grievance-driven identity groups, the same fascists are everywhere mentality, and the same online communities rewarding hostility toward conservatives. And now, under President Donald J. Trump, the country is being forced to confront what the last administration ignored. This isn't a random cluster of incidents. This is a national security threat brewing inside the online spaces nobody in power wanted to monitor. So now, here's where things go from suspicious to outright alarming. Because according to the investigators, the most revealing data wasn't in the public files. It was in the deleted ones. Posts wiped, chat logs erased, profiles edited after the Butler attack. But no matter how much someone tries to scrub the trail, digital footprints don't vanish. Metadata remains, server backups remain, and what investigators recovered from Crooks' deleted activity showed unmistakable links to the exact same Discord channels, user groups, and ideological message loops that shaped multiple far-left attackers before him. Now, someone tried to erase these connections. Someone didn't want the public to see the full story. And now that the deleted logs are out, the cover-up looks even worse than the crime itself. Now, here's the part that should make every American furious. The reason you haven't heard a single legacy outlet dig into these Discord pipelines is because the story crosses the line that the media refuses to touch. It implicates groups they treat as untouchable. They're talking about LGBTQ coded online communities, furry subcultures, radical identity spaces, corners of the internet the press shields with religious devotion. So instead of reporting the truth, they pivoted back to their comfort zone. Boomer Facebook misinformation, MAGA extremism, right-wing threats. They ran the script they always run, even when the evidence was screaming in the opposite direction. And because of that refusal, because of their cowardice, an entire nation was misled about where the real danger is coming from. And now, in November 2025, this problem doesn't just sit in a file folder. It lands directly on the desk of President Donald J. Trump. Because what these new revelations show isn't just one shooter or two shooters. It's an entire digital ecosystem that's breeding political extremism. It's youth indoctrination running on autopilot. It's ideological grooming disguised as safe spaces and support communities. It's all happening inside the very platforms federal agencies ignored for years. Now the Trump administration faces a brutal reality. They must untangle decades of institutional neglect, dismantle these radicalization hubs, rebuild trust after the FBI's stonewalling, and confront a politically explosive truth. The most dangerous domestic threat to conservatives isn't right-wing extremism. It's far-left digital indoctrination networks hiding in plain sight. So here's the part that nobody wants to admit. If Crooks and the Kirk shooter both came out of the same digital pipeline, then logic says that they weren't the only ones inside of it. I mean, the most dangerous individuals aren't the ones who've already acted. It's the ones who are still sitting in those servers right now. It's the ones that are still absorbing the same propaganda. It's the ones that are being told every day that the conservatives are the monsters, that President Trump is a dictator, that violence is self-defense. If two attackers emerge from this machine, how many more are still being shaped at this very moment as you're watching this video right now? How many are one bad day away from snapping? We don't know. This is exactly why the public deserves complete, unfiltered transparency. Not someday, now. So here we are, guys. The files are out, the lies are exposed, and the pipeline, this hidden, festering online machine radicalizing America's most vulnerable kids, has been finally dragged into the light. For more than a year, they told you Crooks was a Republican. They told you that the Charlie Kirk shooter was random. They told you the danger was coming from the right. But the receipts say otherwise. The deleted logs say otherwise. And the digital trail that they tried to erase says everything. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a pattern, one that the FBI muted, the media ignored, and institutions buried. Until now. President Trump now faces the defining national security challenge of this era, dismantling a youth radicalization network hiding in plain sight on platforms no one thought to investigate. And as these revelations continue to break, one thing is absolutely certain. The truth didn't just come out. It broke through the walls built to contain it. Now, if you're watching this, drop your thoughts down below because this story isn't over, not even by a long shot.